Hello, welcome or welcome back to Life on the Franch. So I talked about in my last book video that we recently went to Hawaii. And one of the things that I like to do when I travel is to find local bookstores and buy some books. I try to get a couple of things when I'm looking for books when I travel. I want to get a book that's about the place, written by someone from the place, or a book that's from an author from that place. And the second type of book I like to get is an LGBTQ plus book, because I want to support bookstores having LGBTQ plus books in their shelves, particularly like local bookstores. Obviously, I would like all bookstores to have them. But you're more likely to find them sometimes in big chain stores, but I'd like to see them being sold in smaller shops because I prefer to shop more local, but it's hard to do if they don't sell what you are looking for. So this is the tale of two local shops I went to in Hawaii, specifically on Oahu. So the first bookstore I went to, I'm not going to name it because it doesn't deserve hate, but I went to the bookstore and they focused on selling used books. So, I wasn't terribly optimistic that they would have something, but I thought maybe they'll have some queer books. And as a bisexual, it's very important to me to see myself represented in the bookstores where I shop, and characters that are similar to me, or really anywhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And so I go into the store and I'm looking around, and they have, unsurprisingly, a very large romance section, because what a lot of people read on the beach are romance novels, but all of the romance novels that they had were straight romance novels. And we're talking this is 3 full shelves of romance novels, and a lot of them by the same authors, like Nora Roberts, that kind of author. And I was pretty disappointed to see a section that large and to have not even one book was a little disappointing. But I was going to give them kind of the benefit of the doubt, because it is a used bookstore, right? Maybe because a lot of queer books are kind of new, and the ones that aren't are kind of collected, that they wouldn't have as many in used bookstores at the moment. Although I was able to find a lot of used books, queer used books, online, so I don't know how, whatever. But I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt until I went up to the counter and I asked, I was like, hey, do you have any LGBTQ plus books? Could be nonfiction, could be fiction, could be romance, whatever you have, what do you have? And they were like, well, we have a very large catalog, and we can't fit all of our catalog into the store. And, so we don't really have those on the shelves right now. We do a big sale, if you're going to be around, we do a big sale in June. And so basically they're saying the only time of the year that they bother to put their queer books, which they apparently have in their very large catalog, out for sale is for Pride. And I was just so disheartened because, well, A, they lost business. B, because we'll get into that, but they definitely lost a good amount of business. But then B, it's just important to be seen all the time. And yeah, it's great, I guess, that these companies and bookstores and whatever care about the LGBTQ plus community during Pride, but it just seems very false when they only care during Pride. That should not be the only time you carry these books. And I'm not saying have a whole section, but even if you just had 10 books, just 10 that you put on the shelf, I think it would really help people feel seen when they go into your store. The bar is pretty low. I'm not saying it should be this low, but it is pretty low because, maybe people aren't buying these books. But I feel like the recent success of books like Red, White, and Royal Blue, which was loved by straight people and queer people alike, show that some LGBTQ plus books have hit mainstream and will be bought by people outside of the community. So I think the argument that our community is too small is shrinking. And even if we are a small community, that doesn't mean you shouldn't sell any books, because it just ends up feeling unwelcoming, especially when you're going to turn around and say, instead of like, oh, we just haven't gotten any donated, well, no, we have them, but we just only are selling them at Pride. That to me is what made it sting a little bit more. Because I think I would have understood if, like, again, it's a used bookstore, if no one had donated. What I don't understand is people have donated, but you didn't put them out. But then I had also the best experience I've ever had at a non-specifically queer bookstore with buying queer books. So the name of the shop, and this is not sponsored, is Duh Shops. And so I called ahead because I was worried now that they wouldn't have any LGBTQ plus books and I'd walk away empty-handed again. So I called ahead and I was like, hey, do you have any LGBTQ plus books? And they were like, well, what genre are you thinking? And I was like, I'm open to basically any genre as long as it's LGBTQ plus. And they were like, yeah, we have some. We don't really have a section. They're kind of spread out throughout the store, but I'll gather them for you so when you come in, you'll have a stack to look at. And I was like, oh, that's so above and beyond. Excellent service. You don't need to do that. I could have found them, but thank you. So then 20 minutes later, we show up at the store, and not only did they have them set out, for me, the store owner comes up, or the employee, I don't know if she owned the store, she might just have worked there, but she comes over, and then she gives me like a 2-sentence synopsis for each of the books she pulled, and why she pulled them. It was just very cool, and it felt so, I felt so safe, and so seen, and so validated at that experience that I ended up buying 4 books while I was there. Because I just felt, especially in comparison, so validated that my, identity and my reading preferences were available. And I will say it wasn't near, it was not, in downtown Honolulu. It was kind of by, Cocoa Head, if you're familiar, but it was so worth going to if you're on Oahu and you're looking for, a small bookstore. I thought that their service was amazing, and I am very excited to be reading these books. So I talked about, in my last video, reading the Passing Playbook. So I'm not going to talk about this again, except to say I really recommend it. It's a YA novel about a transgender boy and his decision to whether or not to go stealth at his new school after a traumatic incident that made him change from a public school to a private school, and kind of the impact of that negative experience and his decision to go stealth, and the debate about safety versus advocacy, how does that all play out? And not only that, the other main character of the story is a gay kid who has a very unsupportive house. The kid who is a transgender boy, he has a very supportive family. It's about miscommunication. It's just really good. It talks about both, I think, really well, I think it can be a little bit preachy at times, but I feel like a lot of YA books are, because they really want to like make it very clear, because I think, you know, they think high schoolers need it really spelled out for them. But yeah, it was a good romance novel. I mean, obviously it's not steamy because it's high schoolers, but I would recommend. I enjoyed this book, and I think it did a really good job of talking about the issues of transgender students in high school and the issues that they face, whether that's bathrooms, roll call, their records, birth certificates, playing on sports teams. It just hits a lot of topics. And so if you've never met someone who is trans or been friends with someone who is transgender, this is a great starting point for you, because you'll see what the lived experience is like without it being like, you know, a nonfiction book. You'll see it through the eyes of a character, and I think that makes it easier to digest and read. So, a good book, I felt. Is it my favorite? No, but I thought it was very good. These are the ones I haven't read yet, so I'm not going to review them, but I'll just show them to you. So, we have AntiMan, which is a hybrid memoir by Rajiv Mahabir. I'm so bad at names. I promise I am trying. But basically, this book focuses on intersectionality. So it talks about being an immigrant to the United States. It talks about, you know, his family in India and trying to connect with his heritage. It talks about Christian, like his westernized Christian family as well. It talks about his coming to terms with being gay and like his homophobic family, and just being excluded at every turn for various reasons, things he can't change. And the title of the book, AntiMan, is a Caribbean slur for a gay man, or a man who loves men. And I'm very excited to read it. The back says it's going to be not just in a narrative form, but also there'll be poetry, or it'll be poetic at least, and it will be like lyrical. So I'm very curious to read about it. It's going to hit on a lot of important topics. So I'm very interested to read this book. I think the book I'm most interested to read, though, is She Called Me Woman, which is a collection of short, true memoirs, stories, that all center around Nigeria's queer women. And so they talk about their stories. There are a lot of like trigger warnings for this book, but it's 25 first-hand accounts to paint a vivid portrait of what it means to be a queer Nigerian woman. And it's stories of resistance and resilience, and the realities of community that will no longer be invisible. And like I said, there are like dark themes like addiction and suicide, but there's also memories of childhood and the excitement of first love. So I'm just very excited to see this book, because most of the fiction I read about the queer community takes place in the US, so I'm excited to see a Nigerian woman's perspective. And I also like this about it because it does talk about, he goes to India at some point in this book. So I'm just very excited to see, again, like intersectionality at play. In my last video, I talked about a memoir called Not All Boys Are Blue. It's a YA memoir, which talks about the intersectionality between blackness and queerness. And I thought it was very interesting. It was clearly YA. I didn't, and it focused in the US. That was the location of the memoir. That's where he lived. So I feel like I have my own experiences to think about, but I'm really excited to hear about these other books. And finally, like I said, I do try to buy a book written by a Hawaiian author, or wherever I travel, an author from there that takes place there. Typically, I buy a nonfiction book. I almost did on this trip, but then someone in the store, I was looking at this book, and they recommended it. They were like, I just finished it, get this book. So I did. It's called Sharks in the Time of Saviors. And it's about, I think, this boy who is out swimming, and a shark safely carries him to shore when he is lost at sea. And it's about his family. It's about them like drifting apart and then coming back, and there's like mysticism. I'm very excited. I have not read a lot of mysticism like that takes place in the modern day, but it's supposed to be also like a good insight as to like Hawaiian culture and the history of Hawaiian families that live on Hawaii. So I'm excited to read this book. I don't know when I'm going to review it, just because I don't know where it fits in, but I will review it on the channel once I've read it. But yeah, I know I've been doing a lot of these book videos recently. They're going to continue just because I like to read, and this is forcing me to read outside my comfort zone slightly, and to learn more about the world, and to read a little bit more nonfiction. So that's the plan, fam. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of our content, click subscribe, ding the bell button to know when we post. And most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye! I forgot to mention that, so in Hawaii you pay for bags. So we did not buy any bags, we just like carried things and had our own bags. But because we spent so much at this store, they gave us like a free bag, like a canvas bag. So like I said, it's called The Shop. It was super cute. Stan also really liked it. They had a whole section of books by local authors, and they had like all different genres and a good selection of like LGBTQ plus books. When that was not the point of the store, it was just a bookstore that had a variety of topics. And I just really loved it. It was one of my favorite moments on the trip, which is weird because like I enjoyed like the hikes and the snorkeling and stuff too, but I think I just felt the most seen at this bookstore. So if you're there and you're looking for a bookstore, I would recommend it. Okay, now bye.